Okay, so we have the GCSE Computer Science exam paper in front of us from June 2022, and we are looking at section B. Just to let you know, we are going to be using Python where possible to answer questions. So let's start. Question 5. Customers at a hotel can stay between 1 and 5 inclusive nights and can choose between a basic room or a premium room. A typical booking record is shown in the table. Cool, so we've got an example. State the most appropriate data type for the following fields, nights and room. So let's take a look. We have nights here with a value of 3. So we know 3 is a number and the data type for a number is integer. So that should be our answer here. For room, we have room and then premium. So premium is a description of the room, so that would be done in text, and the data type for that is string. And we can take a look at the section B mark scheme here for question 5A1. And we have integer and string as the answers. Please note that you should not use whole number or text or character to describe string or integer. They want data types, which is the most important thing here. If you can't find that in your textbooks, here's a very good resource, BBC. They have a lot of OCR GCSE stuff on here. And you can see we have data types and the table that shows integer, whole numbers, float, decimal. It's a really good reference point there. The link will be in the description below. Let's go back to the paper. So next question, give the name of one field that could be stored as a Boolean data type. Now, let's take a look. We have first name and stay complete down here has false in it. Now, this is a perfect example to use a Boolean type because there's only two options here for stay complete. Has the guest completed their stay or not? And this is the perfect example of when you would use a Boolean. So let's take a look at the mark scheme. 5A2, stay complete is the answer. Ignore spaces or misspelling as long as recognizable. So fine. All good. Question 3. Booking records are stored in a database table called table bookings. The following SQL statement is written to display all customer bookings that stay more than one night. So we have a query. The SQL statement is incorrect. Rewrite the SQL statement so that it is correct. So pretty clear, it wants us to fix this query. We're going to be using MySQL here, by the way. And so when you want to debug something like this, what you want to do is you want to find out what exactly is the query meant to do. So display all customer bookings that stay more than one night. That is what our query should be doing. Now let's compare what it should be doing to what it is actually doing. Select all. So first of all, there is a problem here because all is not accepted. What you would like to do is use the asterisk character or star character from your keyboard, and that will select all the field names from your table. If you didn't want to do that and you wanted to be explicit, you could just list each field name and separate them by commas. From table bookings, that's fine. If nights less than 1. So two things wrong here. If is not accepted, we should be using where as the keyword. And night is fine, but it should be greater than 1 because we have stay more than one night. So that should be it. Let's take a look at the mark scheme. Select first name. So here we go. You can see it's just a list of all the field names separated by a comma, or we could use select star. From table bookings, where, which is important, like we said, nights greater than 1. Other options are nights greater than equal to 2, which is fine. Nights between 2 and 5, a strange way to do it, but it is an option as well. So other information here, ignore capitalization, which is okay, but spelling must be correct, which is very important, because if your spelling is incorrect, it's not going to work in SQL. Ignore quotes around, okay, so you can ignore quotes and allow, okay, cool, that's about it there. But what I wanted to do is show you the SQL actually running on a database. So we have hotel as our database and table bookings as our table. You can see we have first name, surname, nights, room to match the paper. And we also have records. We have 4 here, Josh, David. They have varying nights and types of rooms and stuff like that. But if we had to take the valid query from our answer and run it on this table, we should get David and Callum back because they are staying more than one night. So let's go to our SQL tab here, and I'll just get the query. And that is it. Select all from table bookings where nights greater than 1. And if we run this, and we get back a total of 2, and we have David and Callum with nights 2 and 3. So I think it's very important to see the stuff working, because I know it must be very difficult to look at it just on a piece of paper. So I hope this makes it a little bit clearer for you. Okay, so question B. When a new booking is recorded, the details are entered into a program to validate the values. The following criteria are checked. First name and surname are not empty. Room is either basic or premium. Nights is between 1 and 5. So what they are saying here is this is the validation criteria that data has to go through or pass before it's saved into the database. If any invalid data is found, not allowed is displayed. If all data is valid, allowed is displayed. Complete the following program to validate the inputs. You must either... Okay, so we're going to be using Python for this answer. So we have the first bit of a program here, and by input, you can tell that it's going to be a command line program. And I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to put it into my IDE, which is going to make it a lot easier for you to understand. So we have first name, and let's run this code. To me, I'm somebody who must see the code running and fiddle with it to actually understand how it works. So you can see we have it running in the bottom here. It's a command line program. So it asks us to input a first name, a surname, basic or premium, and our rooms, and it comes back with nothing. So you can see that it's just accepting any data. And even if we had to just hit enter, 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 so we have no data, then it's still just coming back with nothing. If we go back to our question, what we want to achieve is we either have to say not allowed if anything is invalid, or we have to say allowed when the data is valid. So the best way to do this is we can say valid equal to true. So what we're doing here is we are assuming that by default, the data is valid, but that's okay because we're going to then do our checks. And the first check is first name and surname are not empty. So we would like to do a conditional. So if first name equal to an empty string, or if surname is equal to an empty string, then valid is false because now it makes sense when you read it. So by default, it's false, but the moment, by default, it's true, but the moment there's a condition that fails, we say false. And a good way to just say if valid is false, then we want to print not allowed. Okay, so let's run this now. So now if we just had to be empty, 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 we get back not allowed. So that's good. That shows that we have achieved the first part. If any invalid data is found, not allowed is displayed. But if we want this to pass, we should have a print allowed. And we can do an exit here. So if we do an exit there, then nothing else is going to be executed. So if we rerun the program again, we do first name, but nothing, 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 we get not allowed. And note, it does not print allowed. So that's good. Let's try this time with valid data, first name, surname, basic, anything, and it's allowed. So you can see that first name and surname could be anything, anything that's not a empty string, basically. Now the next bit is room is either basic or premium. So we want to restrict what we are inputting for room. The next thing we can just do is copy and paste this, and we can say room. I can copy and paste room. So if room is not equal to basic, and which is the important distinction here, not equal to premium, then it's false. So if we had to rerun this, so we want to put a valid name, a valid surname. Now we want to put a valid room type. Great, everything's allowed so far, that's good. Now if we did a first name, a surname, and did something invalid there, and valid not allowed, that's good. So that means it's not accepting something that's not basic or premium. We can try one more time, first name, surname, and this time we'll type in premium and enter nights, and it's allowed, so that's good. So we've tested basic and premium. Now we need nights is between 1 and 5. So we can copy and paste this, and we can say if nights is less than 1, or if nights greater than 5, and that will be false. So yeah, if it's between 1 and 5, so if it's less than and greater than, then we'll have false. Now note that this is complaining, it's expected type string. So over here, you know that whatever we input is being stored into these variables. And for nights, we want it to be an integer. So I'm just going to cast that input to an integer. Now, if we run this again, valid first name, valid surname, valid room type, and now we want to put an invalid night, and it's not allowed because it's 44. But if we did first name, surname, basic, and if we wanted to put a valid one, hit enter, it's allowed. So that's fantastic. So let's see what happens in Python if we didn't do the casting. Will it still allow it? So first name, surname, basic, and 2. So you can see it doesn't actually convert it from a string to an integer. We would have to do that ourselves, and that's what we have up here. So I believe that is it. So if we go back, we can double check. When a new booking is recorded, the details are entered into a program to validate the values. The following criteria are checked. First name and surname are not empty, and we do that here. If first name, okay, all good. Room's either basic or premium, so we're restricting it to basic and premium. Nights is between 1 and 5, and we got between 1 and 5. And complete the following program to validate inputs, and that looks like it's it. So it's important to note here that there's multiple ways to do this, but if we go to the mark scheme, you can see they want us to use, this actually looks like a huge wall of text, and I know it can be so confusing, but this is the important bit here, and you can see that they say valid equals true. So they want you to do the valid equals true bit here, so you have that variable as sort of the absolute truth that says, look, this is what's happening in the program. Everything's valid until this happens, or until this happens, or until this happens. So that's what they want you to do. And everything else is similar here. So if first name is equal to an empty string, surname equal to a string, if room is not equal to basic and not equal to premium, notice the key bits here is or, and over here less than 1 or nights greater than 5. And then they do the same thing, if valid, then print allowed, else. They did an if else, so this is also a different way to do it. So print else, print not allowed. Right, so what else do they have? Example shows, checking for invalid data, checks for valid data equally acceptable. Okay, so they have just variations here. So not equal to and surname. See, even though they're variations, they still work the same. I encourage you to try it out if you are confused and you don't quite understand just reading this. It is pretty important. If you understand how it works and you can run the code, then stuff like this will be very simple for you to answer. Okay, so next question. Complete the following test plan to check whether the number of nights is validated correctly. So what this is doing here is it is a record of tests that we would run in our program, manual tests that we would run in our program, just like the tests we did while we were writing the code. So we know that this is referring to the number of nights. Okay, and if we scroll up, we'll see in our question beforehand, it says nights is between 1 and 5. Okay, so that's the table is referring to the test plan for that. So test data, number of nights 2, type of test is blank, expected output is allowed. So we know that 2 is allowed, and that should be our valid test. And next one, test data is blank, type of test is boundary, expected output is allowed. So the boundaries are 1 and 5 because that's stated above. And we can put 1 or 5 here, and that should be the answer. Next, test data is blank again. Type of test is invalid or erroneous. Expected output not allowed. So anything outside that boundary really should be fine. So we can put 10 as an example. Let's take a look at the mark scheme. So the mark scheme has normal, 105, any numeric value except 1 to 5. Okay, so allow other descriptions that mean normal, fine. So here's the actual table. Normal, we said valid, and that's the same thing, and they accept valid here. We said 1 or 5 for boundary, and we said 10, but 7 is absolutely fine. So that is 5B2. Okay, next question. A basic room costs £60 each night. A premium room costs £80 each night. Create a function, new price, that takes the number of nights and the type of room as parameters, calculates and returns the price to pay. You do not have to validate these parameters, and we'll be using Python. So it's pretty simple. We just need to calculate price. So a very simple calculation, which would be nights multiplied by if it's a basic room cost or a premium room cost. So we are going to go to our editor to make this a little bit easier for you. And we're going to create our function new price. And it's going to accept number of nights as a parameter and type of room. Okay. Now, we can do this. We can say price is equal to 0. So we know that, okay, we will return this price in the end. So whatever happens, we can do calculations on the price, and then we'll return it in the end. So we can do if type of room is basic, then we want to do our basic calculation, which will be price is then equal to number of nights multiplied by the basic cost, which is 60. I'll just double check that actually. Yep, £60 a night for the basic room. And now if we want to handle the premium room, we can do if type of rooms equal to premium, price number of nights is 80. Cool. And that's our function. And we can even call it down here. We can print it out, and we can give it another nice 3. And type of room, let's go with basic. Okay, run. So 180 for 3 nights, and basic, perfect. And if we did premium, and it's more, fantastic. Okay. Write program code that uses new price to output the price of staying in a premium room for 5 nights. And that's pretty much exactly what we just did. We called a function, and we printing it out to the terminal. Pretty simple. And that's that question. So let's take a look at the mark scheme for that. So function header for new price, taking at least 2 parameters, correctly calculate. Okay, we did all that. Ignore any code outside, attempt a function. So be careful. You need to make sure that your code is actually within the function itself. And in Python, you know, that is done by indentations, so tabs over here to say that we are inside the function that we just created. And ignore additional parameters, ignore inputs. Okay, just as long as they don't override parameters. If input, attempt at calculation needed to award. Cool. So here's the actual code. Function new price, nights room. So it's named differently. You can, I guess, call it something that makes sense. If room is equal to basic, then price is 60 times your nights. Else, if room is equal to premium, then price is equal to that. And if return price. So even simpler, you can just remove price from here. And you could return that. Return, if I could spell return correctly. And then we don't even need that. And if we had to do this again, we have 240. And if we had to do this again, perfect. So the thing what you need to realize with programming is there's a lot of ways to actually get the correct answer. But try your hardest to stick to what it says in the mark schemes, because that's what the marks are going to be looking for. Okay, next question. The hotel has 9 rooms that are numbered from room 0 to room 8. The number of people currently staying in each room is stored in an array with the identifier room. The index of room represents the room number. And here's our array, which is called room. And we have index 0 to 8 with the amount of people staying in each one of those rooms. Now, we have 9 rooms, but our room is it's starting from room 0 and then going to 8. So it helps us in the case of this array. Now, the following program counts how many people are currently staying in the hotel. We have some code. When tested, the program is found to contain 2 logic errors. Describe how the program can be refined to remove these logic errors. So when you see logic errors, you should be thinking along the lines of some sort of calculations or counts are wrong somewhere. And we can take a look at our code. For count equal to 1, to 8, total equals 0, total equals total plus room count, next count. Okay, so in this code, you can see it's a for loop, and we're setting count equal to 1, and that means this is going to loop 8 times. Remember, we have 9 rooms, so there's a problem there. And you can see count is being used to reference the amount of people in each room. Okay, so if we started from 1, we will skip this. So it'll do all of this and it'll skip 0. So this should be changed to 0. So we can reference that index. And next we have total equal to 0, and then total plus room count, and then next count, and then print total. The problem with total being here is that every time we loop, we're resetting the total to 0, and that's going to give us an incorrect count. Now we're going to write this in Python, and it's going to be a little bit clearer to you. So let's get rid of this. And I'm just going to paste the Python version of the array, so a list, which will have or match up to exactly these numbers. Now, what we're going to do is, like we said before, we want the total equal to 0 outside of the loop. And we're going to say we can do 4 people in room. And we can say total is equal to total plus people. And then we can print total. And let's see what it says. It says 14, and that's exactly it. 2, 3, 6, 8, 9, 10, 14. And that's exactly what we want. So this is the Python way of doing it. And you can see in Python, if we move this here, I think the program breaks because it runs, but it doesn't know about everything else. It only counts the last number here. So if we change that to 5, it's 5. So you want total outside. Change that back to 1. Okay, cool, 14. Now let's take a look at the mark scheme. For loop changed to include 0, that's what we did, and total moved to before loop starts, that's what we did as well. Do not accept moving total outside the loop, accept correct. Cool, so that's it for this question. Okay, so final question. The hotel car park charges £4 per hour. If the car is electric, this price is halved to £2 per hour. Write an algorithm to take as input the number of hours the user has parked and whether their car is electric or not. Calculate and output the total price. Repeat continually until the user enters 0 hours. And then we'll be using Python. Okay, so a couple of things here. The first thing we know that our algorithm has to do is take input. And it says, take as input the number of hours and whether the car is electric or not. So that's our 2 inputs. And let's go to our IDE and store them. So what can we call it? We can say maybe hours parked, and that's equal to input And the prompt can be, how many hours have you parked your car for? Okay, so that's input 1. Input 2 can be, is electric. So you can see clear variables, clear names for variables, and it makes it a lot easier when we are actually working with our code. The next question will be, is your car electric? Is your car electric? And I'm going to introduce you to something here. You can see I put Y and N. Now, these are the options that we want the user to answer with. We can only accept yes or no for this question. So we want to make it easier for the user and give them the options. It's very common practice in command line programs to see this. So get used to it. You'll see it around. So we can run this and it'll say, how many hours have you parked your car for? We can say 2, and is your car electric? Yes or no. The program's not doing anything at the moment because we have no other code. But let's go back to our question. Calculate and output the total price. So we know that we have to do a calculation and we have to figure out price. So if a car if it's not electric, it's £4 an hour. And if it is, it's £2 per hour. So we just have to take £4 times the amount of hours, or £2 times the amount of hours, based on the condition, is the car electric or not. So let's go back to our code. And whenever there's a condition like that, we can say if is electric equal to yes, because this is what we're telling the user to answer with. And we can say price is equal to hours parked multiplied by, so if it's electric, it's 2. And then we can do else price is equal to hours parked multiplied by 4, because for non-electric cars, it's £4 an hour. And finally, we can print the price. So let's try this again. How many hours have you parked for? 2. Is your car electric? Yes. 22. So anybody out there, can you determine why that's happening? If you think back to our previous work, you'll know that Python has a hard time taking strings and putting them into a calculation. So hours parked, we would need to cast as an int. So now that it's cast as an integer, the math should work. How many hours have you parked your car for? 2. Is your car electric? Yes. And 2 times 2 is 4. And that's what we are looking for. And how many cars, we can try it again with 2. And if it's not electric, then 8, because 2 times 4. That's good. So that is the second part. Now, the last bit. Repeat continually until the user enters 0 hours. Now, if we want code to repeat, we will use a loop of some sort. And here we can use a while loop and say, while hours parked, in fact, we would like everything to be inside this while loop. So while hours parked is not equal to 0, because they say repeat continually until the user enters 0. So we want the code to keep running when it's not 0. Then loop through everything. Okay. Now, this will fail. Okay, so the reason why it fails is because Python wants this to be declared. Now we can say hours parked equals to an empty string, and I'll code it run. We can put hours parked to 1, and I'll code it run. So my suggestion is, first for now, leave this as an integer, because we're doing a check here with 0, and hours parked is always going to be an integer. So it's better off just keeping it as that. So now let's rerun this code, and we can answer 2, yes, and then our code is repeated. So we got the correct output. And if we did 2, n, we get 8, and it's still repeating. And now if we hit 0 and say n, it stops. So that is exactly what the question is saying. Repeat continually until the user enters 0 hours. So we have managed to do all 3 things here. Take the input, calculate the output, repeat continually until we have 0 hours. Now remember, you can do this multiple ways, but the mark scheme is suggesting to do it in a similar way to this. This is how you do it in Python. Let's take a look at the mark scheme. So it gives you marks for inputs and input hours and electric as two separate inputs. Good, we did that. Checks the car's electric. We got an if statement that does that. Correctly calculate the output. We did the calculation, so we got 1 and 2. Attempted repetition, which we did as well. So we should score all points or marks. And there's a bunch of there's a description here. I think we could ignore this for now. And here's their code block. You can see it's pretty much exactly like ours. The only thing that it manages to do is run with hours not being initialized, which is fine. As you saw in Python, if we removed this, then it'll be a problem. But this is a perfectly acceptable example. As you can see, it accomplishes everything that the question is asking us to do.